Virunga National Park has to be one of the most amazing parks in Africa. What makes it so unique is the range of habitats that it's got in it. From the Lake Edward in the middle, moving up the slopes to the volcano mountains, where the mountain gorillas occur, to the Ruwenzori's mountains, which are the snow-capped peaks. Amazing to think of snow right on the equator. Most people only think of Kilimanjaro, but this is another one. These habitats and this range in habitats make it home to an amazing amount of different species. There's more different species found here than in any other protected area in Africa. That's over 2,000 different species of plants, over 200 species of mammals, and over 700 species of birds.
And Virunga is unique in that part of the world. Don't forget that's the mother of parks in Africa. That is the very first park that was created that have given birth to conservation in the continent. There's nowhere you can find such a diversity in Africa. And as an organization that deals with conservation, I think it's a moral obligation that we keep that intact.
I think Virunga National Park has tremendous potential to benefit people living around the park and to return to its former glory. What we just need is a bit of stability in the region to enable these projects to really take off and to enable the park to move forward. Populations are all still present within the park, albeit in small numbers, and they can build up again quite sufficiently if we can get that stability in the region. WWF believes that Virunga National Park can make a very important contribution to the economic development of Eastern DRC, and we would just like to see that taken forward. Virunga National Park is valuable to the communities on two levels. The firstly is that where people's fresh water comes from. It's a lot of the fish stocks that feed people living around the park come from Lake Edward in the centre of the park. Aside from that, revenue from tourism, which is providing money for local community projects, building schools and wells and other resources.
These folks are our parents, our brothers, our sisters, trying to make a living out of the natural resources they've got. And if you spoil this natural resource, if you pollute the waters, then the fishermen have nowhere to go. If you spoil the soil, the farmers are nowhere to go. And you cannot do handout day in, day out to help them. They will help themselves if you leave their land alone.
Virunga National Park represents a line in the sand for WWF. We believe that exploration for minerals and oil and the mining of those products will damage the ecological integrity of Virunga National Park. There are some places in the world which are just too precious for us to let such activities take place. And we believe that ultimately oil development within Virunga National Park will not benefit the park, will damage the World Heritage Site, and will not help the development of the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. We believe that exploration in Virunga National Park and associated drilling for oil or for minerals within the park will outweigh the potential benefits that the park can generate. The key factors are increased exploration in the park could damage fish stocks, affecting local fishermen's livelihoods, will increase the amount of people looking for jobs, and open up the parks for people to undertake illegal activities such as deforestation and poaching. We believe that oil and minerals will encourage rebel groups to become more active in the park and increasing the amount of conflict there. Increased infrastructure, which oil companies will need to be able to operate in there, will also encourage more people to get into the park to explore illegally. Oil exploration won't just affect the closest species within it, but have an effect across the park. We know that species like mountain gorillas and the other eastern lowland gorillas are only there because their habitat has been protected. If local communities believe that the government will sell off its most precious resource for the highest bidders, local communities may lose their trust and regard for the government and will encourage increased illegal activities within the park. Or the other threats that may occur is that the government charged with protecting the park is having to spend increased time away from areas with species like with gorillas in it, in other parts of the park where the oil exploration is, leaving these areas exposed to more poaching and illegal activity. Virunga National Park's most iconic species has to be its mountain gorillas, and we believe that this, with the many other species in the park, will be indirectly impacted by oil exploration. One of the most immediate threats are, as more exploration takes place, the government will have to put more resources into working on oil exploration and monitor the impacts of the site, which means that there'll be less people protecting mountain gorillas. We know that mountain gorillas are mostly threatened by illegal activities such as forest clearing and habitat loss and indirect impacts of poaching. Less people there protecting mountain gorillas will mean more people going into the park to access it. One of the other indirect threats to species like mountain gorillas will be increased infrastructure. We know some of the roads which the oil companies will need to develop to access parts of the park are close to mountain gorilla habitat. As those roads are improved, that will enable increased access into the park and will enable more people to collect wood and result in increased habitat damage. We also know from other parts of Africa where road networks are improved that poaching associated along the edges of these roads also increases.
When you explore, the ultimate goal is to exploit. So if you exploit, then you're creating conditions that may lead to the degazettement of the park. And when it happens, there will be no rules to protect the forest cover.
WWF's been working in Virunga National Park for over 40 years. Here our works ranged from working on mountain gorillas, where we're trying to conserve one of the rarest species of great ape still remaining, to helping local people living around the park to benefit from it, and also to help reduce the footprint that local communities have on the park through illegal activities such as charcoal, and working with people in Goma to improve the fuel-efficient stoves, and so that they have to use less charcoal, improving local people's livelihoods and qualities of life. It's very important for WWF to make sure that conservation goes hand in hand with the people. With 4 million people living around the park, if they're not benefiting from the park, you're never going to be able to save it.
There's no way you can do conservation in Central Africa without thinking about livelihoods, because 70% of the people in that area are rural dwellers. And they rely on natural resources for their daily lives. I hear here and there people talking about WWF core business as being conservation, but conservation without livelihoods in DRC is conversation. That's all there is.
WWF believes that it's important for these parts of the world to develop further to encourage their economies to grow. What we believe is that there's some places in the world which are just too precious and the risks associated with it outweigh the benefits. It's very important, therefore, that we don't allow exploration to go ahead, and we encourage the park to make use of its natural resources to further development associated with that. The World Heritage Commission recommends no exploration of minerals and oil within World Heritage sites, and we encourage countries which have signed this convention to adopt it and ensure that their companies obey best practice around this.